37. Life Exchange. Raelif was in his element, the thick of battle. Magic swirled around him like a storm plasma, lightning, fire, ice. The Leviathan were so thick on the platform, evidently having poured in from the rift, that it looked like there were no walls. Even the train tracks were obscured with a sea of shadowy coils. His magic struck out at anything that came within range. Ice-coated smoky scales, which he shattered with a blow of lament. Fire raced along black bodies, as if they were soaked in flammable oil. The Leviathan let out shrill screams and thrashed, which spread the fire even farther, embers leaping onto other Leviathan like happy sparks. Plasma bloomed and vaporized Leviathan where they slithered. He let out a victorious laugh as fangs dropped like rain in a thunderstorm all around him. He glanced over his shoulder at Aquilin, who was against his back. The Sun King grinned at him, brothers in arms, battle bonded. And this may be the last time we fight together. The last time he smiles at me. Next time he may be sending his spells towards me, not to protect me. Raelif's grief had his smile faltering. Why did I lie? Why didn't I tell him who and what I am from the beginning? But he had the answer to that, because I had no choice. He truly wouldn't have let me live long enough to tell him my name, let alone my story. Why didn't I tell him after that? In the decades we've been friends, just let it slip that those rumors about me having Kindrith blood were underblown. That I'm a full-blooded night elf. See what happens when I drop my glamour? The answer to that was more complicated, but it boiled down to, I didn't want to chance losing him in my new life. Why rock the boat? Being Kindrith was never going to affect him or anyone else. Except I was wrong. What if Vex is here because of me? Acklin's fingers danced through the air, and a dozen arrows of light appeared and shot towards their Leviathan targets with unerring accuracy. Shrieks of agony were cut short as the darkness was conquered by light, and fangs rattled onto the tile floor. "Brother, boost me!" Elisha called to Darkassin. Darkassin turned towards his twin, dropped down on his haunches, and made his hands into a step. She leaped onto them, and he threw her up into the air. Her twin daggers, the flames, spun around her as she twirled, cutting the coils that slithered above them on the ceiling. For his part, Darkassin sent out a wave of force towards an oncoming set of Leviathan, who were surging down the platform towards him. They went flying back and were pinned against the wall. With a roar, Snaglak smashed one of them flat with his club, while Glom sliced through the other with its sharp claws before swallowing both fangs that fell. These physical weapons weren't what was actually hurting the Leviathan. They weren't physical creatures. It was a magic in the beings who attacked that was made manifest through those weapons that killed the Leviathan. It was ironic, then, that human weapons likely could work against the Leviathan, but not in human hands. Helgrim was not to be overshadowed as he spun like a crazed top with his hammer extended out, hitting Leviathan after Leviathan and sending them flying away to impact the ceiling, wall, floor, or other Leviathan, and dying with a puff of smoke and rattle of fangs. But it was Declan that was truly breathtaking. Raelif had to be honest that he'd never seen such skill with a simple blade. Thankfully, Declan was not using Ardreth, as even Aquilin would likely recognize a Neri blade and would realize that there was nowhere under Declan's clothes that a longsword could have been hidden. Yet it was almost pointless to hide anything any longer. There was no way that a human could move the way he did, let alone kill Leviathan. It was a dance. Declan's sword, flipping head over heels in the air, tossing the blade from one hand to the other as the Leviathan surrounded him. When Declan came near a wall, the floor, or even the ceiling, he could simply push off of it and continue spinning in the air like flying. Maybe he was flying. And death would follow. Declan killed more than double of all of them put together. His expression remained utterly unreadable. His face was smooth and seemingly calm, as if he were in a transcendent state, where he wasn't fighting for his life and their lives, but lounging by a peaceful stream. No anger, no fear, no joy of killing either. Hunter? No, more than that. But what? What else would Vex's son be? And if Raeliff had hoped that in the madness of battle, that Aquilin wouldn't notice Declan's abilities, that was blasted away when he saw Aquilin pause, open-mouthed, as Declan speared one Leviathan with a kitchen knife, while dropping to his haunches as another attempted to encase him in its coils, followed by a graceful swing of his blade, slicing those coils in half. Then Declan was up into the air again, flying, killing, death and grace incarnate. Not human, and there's no denying it any longer. Raeliff wondered what he could do to shield the young man from Aquilин's hatred of Kindreth. Declan was the Night Prince. He was Raeliff's cousin. Family was usually a double-edged blade with Kindreth, but he liked Declan, and he knew that Finley loved Declan. I don't believe that Aquilin would go after him like he did Volray. Declan is already in his heart. He wouldn't do that, Raeliff thought hopefully. Yet Declan is Kindreth. Maybe if I reveal myself, then his hatred could go towards me, and Declan could escape, and... Escape where? Escape how? He has no idea who and what he really is. He has no experience going to different planes. He can't do this alone. He had no answers. He wished he could talk this out with Finley. He needed the young man's steadying comments, but Finley was safely hidden away, and as long as the fight continued, the longer both he and Declan could remain safe and hidden away too. Yet the end of the battle came in moments and all at once. As the Leviathan's numbers dropped, they must have sensed their total destruction was near, so they decided on one final coordinated attack to try and take Raeliff and his friends down in an orgy of coils and claws. All of the Leviathan converged upon them like a wall of black on all sides. Raeliff formed a shield that encompassed all of them, just as Aquilin sent a wave of light outwards that shredded the darkness. Raeliff closed his eyes as the golden light suffused him, nearly getting past his Adiva, but it didn't hurt. The light was not meant for him, only for their enemies. When the light died away, Raeliff opened his eyelids slowly, blinking to adjust even his enchanted eyes to the much lower light. The blue-white flare of the rift was long gone. It had closed sometime during the battle. Whether it had led to Illithor, they evidently would never know. Raeliff took in the tableau before him. Aquilin still had his right hand upraised, from which a single spark of light resided. Darkassin and Elisha were leaning heavily upon one another. Snaglak looked disappointed that the fun was over, while Glom continued to hoover up fangs. Helgrim was staring at Declan. His eyes darted from the young man to Raeliff and back again, as if to tell him something. But what? Declan stood, still and elegant, with his hood back and the knife still glittering in his hand. He wasn't even breathing hard. Lord Declan, Elisha cried out, You're human? But you can't be. She was referring to his ears. For the first time, his hood was back, revealing rounded ears and not pointed. You can't be human. Humans are full of surprises, aren't they? Raeliff laughed brittly. Because of course Declan is human. I am not. Declan said those 3 words softly, but they cut off all discussion. What are you doing, Declan? But even as he thought that, he already knew. Declan was telling the truth, something that he should have done, needed to be doing right now. Aquilin stepped towards Declan, but the young man held up a hand to stop him. Aquilin reluctantly stopped, but the look on his face was anguished and desirous clearly of nothing else but to comfort Declan in this moment of revelation. Sort of look human. Darkassin squinted at him, and Raeliff wanted to curse at him. If not for Darkassin, they would not be in this mess in the first place. Declan's secret, his secret, could have been held for a little while longer while he figured out what to do. But now, all was lost. I am not human, Declan repeated. The words clearly sounded alien to his own ears, but he pushed through them. Declan lifted his head to meet Aquilin's gaze. His eyes were not red. That was a small wonder. I need to apologize to you, King Aquilin. Declan continued, his voice somehow distant and formal, as if he were already imagining a vast gulf between them. I never meant to lie to you or mislead you into thinking I was human, but it was not clear to me until very recently that I am not. Raelif's eyes shot to Aquilin. Was the Sun King angry? He wasn't demanding answers. Instead, he looked empathetic, gentle, kind, understanding. He already guessed Declan was not human, but he hasn't realized what Declan is, let alone who he is. He's a good lad, Aquilin, Helgrim said as he stepped up beside Declan and put a hand at his lower back, as if to claim him. I've known him for years. He is the best, no matter his heritage. I know who he is. And in the end, that's all that matters. There are far too many who rest on their families' accomplishments and the blood in their veins than their own worth. Did Helgrim look at Dirk Hassan right about then? Elisha flushed and looked away. Raelif realized something else, too. Helgrim knew that Declan was a night elf. He had a feeling that Helgrim also knew who his father was. What else would that talk of heritage be? I would have to agree with you, Helgrim. Aqua nodded vigorously. From what I have experienced of Declan in our short acquaintance, he is very good. Please still believe that after you hear his surname is Vex. Neither of you know that. I don't even know that, Declan said with a fierce shake of his head. I did not know. I still do not know who I truly am. But no, I know that I am a danger to you. Acklin was shaking his head more. What? No, Declan, that cannot be. Not me, Declan qualified. There is someone following me, watching me and everyone around me, listening to every word I say and everything I hear. Raelif jerked, and his magical senses flooded out of him. He quickly pulled them back. If Vex was looking after his son, then, just like with the divining spell, such sensing could lead to a trap. Of course Vex is watching his son. Of course he knows he's here. Finley was likely right that he left him here. Who else would? His mother? But who is she? Who could she possibly be? Why? Who? Elisha cried. Who is stalking you? Aquilin looked thunderous, his hands clenched at his sides. You are my citizen. You will not be harassed or harmed in any way. I will make sure of it. I don't know, but I do not want to bring him near you. And if I am near you, then he is. Declan explained with another shake of his head. I will not allow this. Not until I know if he is friend or foe or somewhere in between. Vex. Vex is speaking to him, and Declan wants to find him. Vex will only be found if or when he wishes to be. The truth was that Declan's words, or a version of them, were the words that Raelif should be saying. He should be confessing, even obliquely, that he had a hidden past that could cause harm, that his presence had likely attracted Vex's attention, even if Declan's hadn't. We have rescued Dark Hassan. Now you must take everyone and go back to Tyrael, Declan said with fierceness to Aquilin. You must especially take Finley, because he will not want to leave when I don't come with you. You won't be coming with us. Aquilin's eyes widened in alarm, and this time he moved and grasped Declan's forearms. Declan, you are coming back to Tyrael. You're returning home with us. We will go to the dawn, and you can tell us everything. No, King Aquilin, I must not do that. Declan shook his head. Why wasn't Finley objecting to this, or coming up with some good ideas? Raelif needed those good ideas right about now. He found himself utterly incapable of thinking of anything. He turned his head and saw Snaglak and Glom standing in the hallway that led to where they had left Finley safe and sound. Finley gone, Snaglak said. What? Raelif's voice was sharp, cutting. What are you talking about, Snaglak? Finley cannot be gone. He's right there. Finley, we need you in here right now. He pushed past the orc and the Naki into where the stairwell ended, but he saw no Finley. There was no lithe young man standing in a corner or quivering halfway up the stairs or anywhere at all. Finley was not there. Finley gone, Snaglack repeated, grunting at the end. No, Raeliff whispered as his eyes darted around the room, looking for something, anything to indicate where the young man had gone. This can't be. This can't. No smell blood. No body. Staglack remarked unhelpfully. No kill? Maybe taken. Finley gone. Don't say that. Leviathan scent strong. Fear scent too. But come from us? No, no. Finley fear smell. Snaglack continued inexorably. Shut up! Stop saying that. I need to think. I need to find him. Just quiet. Raeliff snarled. But his own mind wasn't allowing him to think. He remembered the taste of Finley's skin on his lips. He remembered the way Finley pushed his glasses up his nose when they slid down. He remembered how those big blue eyes got even bigger when Raeliff demonstrated magic to him. He remembered. Declan slid past him. Ackland was then at Raeliff's side. Is there any sign of a body, violence, death? Ackland did not finish that sentence. He didn't want to. To say it was to make it manifest. But nevertheless, just like Snaglack had said, there were none of those things. So that meant if a Leviathan got to Finley, that it hadn't killed him. At least not right here. But that didn't mean he wasn't dead. The Leviathan were notorious for taking some victims back to their nests, where they would feed them to their young. As Snaglack had said, Finley taken. But even if that terrible fate had befallen Finley, the Leviathan could have taken the young man to any number of places here or in the Underdark. Did he go back upstairs? Elisha glanced up the stairs to see if Finley was lingering up above. Maybe he just retreated a bit. The fighting was rather fierce. He might have become afraid and backed away. Why wasn't he in there fighting with us? Darkassan asked. And that had Raeliff snapping. He suddenly had Darkassan by the throat and had shoved him up against the wall. Darkassan stared at him open-mouthed. Shock retreated to terror, though, as Raeliff got into his face. Because he was human, you stupid fool. Because he needed his help to find you. So he came with us. Another life, but at risk for you. Raeliff spat and snarled. You who wanted to steal from the gods' damned Night King. You who would have started a war between Night and Sun Elves because you're too ignorant to know that taking anything from Illithor is death. I what? Why would it? He's always watching. The Night King is always watching. Raeliff slammed Darkassan against the wall again and again. Tiles cracked. Dust rained down. Darkassan was making alarming choking noises. All so you could steal a few swords or axes or spellbooks. You think that the paltry things you could carry with your own two hands would turn the tide against the Leviathan if they really were massing against us. Elisha was tugging at his arms. Raeliff, please stop. You're hurting Darkassan. I don't care. He needs to be hurt. Elisha, he got Finley killed. Raeliff's voice bled as he said those words. Don't you understand that? She stopped hitting him. Her eyes went wide and her face paled. Finley lived less than a quarter of a century, Elisha. He was brilliant. You've no idea how brilliant, and he died because your useless brother thought that a few trinkets he'd never be able to truly master could turn the tide of a war that's done, Raeliff shouted. Tears were running down his face. He hadn't even realized when they'd started. He couldn't breathe. His blood was pounding like a drum in his ears. He felt like he wanted to howl. I didn't know, Darkassan gasped out. What you don't know would fill universes, Raeliff shouted. He felt Ackland's hand on his left shoulder. Please, my friend. Please, brother. I know you're full of grief, but Darkassan isn't responsible. Raeliff let out a bark of ugly laughter as he dropped Darkassan like a pile of garbage on the ground. Didn't intend for anyone to come save him because he didn't even have the sense to know he needed saving. Or more like stopping. You're right. He didn't. I should have stayed with Finley. I should have set wards around him. I should have done something to keep him safe. I should never have allowed him to come down here in the first place. I was foolish to think he would be safe, Ackland murmured. You are not responsible, Raylif. I am. Darkassan coughed as he clutched at his throat. Elisha dropped down beside him and patted his shoulder as if he were a little boy who needed comfort. Raylif felt the urge to kick them both. Finley was worth a dozen of them, 100 more. But he was gone. Gone. Maybe he's not dead, Darkassan got out. The body isn't here. Maybe the Leviathan took him back to their nest at Illithor. We could follow after them. Maybe it won't be too late. Snaglak and Glom go Illithor. Get Finley back. Snaglak nodded. Glom burped. Raylif was quivering at Darkassan's words. That could be true. Finley could still be alive in Illithor. Another rift could open. But the Sun Elves could not go there without risking a war with Vex. But he could. Declan could. It was time to end this life to save Finley's. What do you know about the rifts here, Darkassan? Helgrim was asking. How many go to Illithor? How often do they appear? I assume this is the best place to find one as you staked it out. Darkassan got shakily to his feet. He was still rubbing his neck where Raylif had held him. His voice was rough as he said, I was tracking magical traces. Illithor has a certain something about it. I've tracked most of it here. The rifts open every few hours. Hours? Helgrim grimaced. That's not... But he bit back whatever he was going to say. There could still be time, even if that is true. We need to wait for the next rift open and go through it. You could use a locator spell there, can't you, Raylif? I know you can't track between planes, but... I can do that, Raylif agreed. It was something he could do. You saw how many Leviathan there were that came out of the last one, Elisha cried out. She gripped her brother's arm. If there is a nest there, it would be suicide to go through. I have a sunstone, Ackland said quietly. I can power it sufficiently that it could kill most of the Leviathan, even a cavern the size of the one that houses Illithor. The sunstone Ackland was referring to was the one that Declan had stopped Ackland from using earlier. Raylif thought of how casual he had been about counseling Ackland to not act rashly to keep the boys safe. How foolish he had been. But that sunstone meant that they could go through Illithor, though. The use of a sunstone in the Underdark by Illithor. Well, if you are willing to risk it for Finley, I most certainly am, Helgrim grunted. It is a risk I'm willing to take to get Finley back, Ackland said firmly. Give me the sunstone, Raylif suddenly said and stretched out his hand. Ackland tilted his head to the side. My friend, you are powerful indeed, but the power of the sun is my speciality. It is. And under other circumstances, you should be the one to wield it. But not in these. Not by Illithor, Raylif said. I can wield it sufficiently to get to Finley, for Declan and I to get to Finley, and the Night King will not have a reason to think of this as an invasion, or worse. Ackland blinked at him. Raylif, you are my best friend and a noble of the Sun Court. The Night King will see little difference between us if he truly decides to use a rescue mission as an act of war. Raylif's mouth was dry. His chest was tight. He grimaced, but he finally got out, He won't. Raylif, he won't, Raylif repeated. But Ackland wasn't listening to him. I am going, my brother. I am going to Illithor. We will find Finley. Declan, does this plan work for you? Declan had said nothing during this entire interlude. He hadn't even reacted to Raylif's breakdown with Darkassan. His back was to all of them. He was staring at the side wall of the stairwell, just staring at it. Finally, he spoke without turning around towards them. None of you is going with me. I require no assistance. Declan, we all saw your fighting. You are more than impressive, Elisha surprisingly said. But you cannot go to Illithor alone. You do not understand. You think that I am going to enemy territory where only danger awaits me. But I am not, Declan said softly as he reached for the back of his neck. The hair on the back of Raylif's own neck stood up. Ardreth appeared in Declan's hand. I am going home. If you want to read as well as listen to The Night Prince, you have two options. Number one is to join my subscription site, wraithrain.com, and read up to the most recent chapter I've written. Right now, the latest written chapter I posted was 117, so more than 100 chapters ahead of this podcast. And remember, you also get to comment. The other option is to buy the books. We release a book every 3 months because that's the speed that my amazing cover artist can produce the beautiful artwork. And we gotta have that. Book one is actually free to get you started. I'll post the links in the notes.